as happens so often in my life, I ask an innocent question and receive a deeply disturbing and highly upsetting answer. Originally, I'd thought about doing a video on this topic a while ago, since it is a merger of my three greatest loves: marketing, nostalgia, and weird kind of dark stories. So I gathered a bunch of information, but when I looked at it, I ultimately thought, no, this is a little bit distasteful. So I respectfully decided to shelve the idea for the video until I saw a commercial that made me realize, oh no, I should probably make this video after all.
And it's got someone back to their old habits.
And here we are. Some background: when I was a child, I had a Nintendo, like many children, and my parents acquired games for the Nintendo with no thought or foresight or plan. Just sometimes they would see a Nintendo game at a yard sale and think, sure, why not? So I had some normal games like Duck Hunt or Mario Brothers, but I also ended up with a game called Yo Noid. This game featured a character called the Noid who endeavors to save New York City from hooligans who are working for his arch nemesis named Mr. Green. And Mr. Green basically looks like the Noid, but green. And he uses a yo-yo to fight, as you do. At the time, I did have a vague awareness of the Noid outside of this video game. In case you're unaware, the Noid was the Domino's pizza mascot used primarily in the late 80s and early 90s.
Have you ever been frustrated because the Noid ruined your pizza?
He was a creepy claymation figure that they used in commercials and other marketing materials, wearing a skin-tight rubber suit. I don't know what that costume is supposed to be. Is it supposed to be a rabbit? Noid is short for Dominoid. I thought it would have been a play on the word annoyed, but nope. Logic has no place here. Domino's used to have a deal going where they would deliver your pizza in 30 minutes or less, otherwise it would be free. And the Noid was a character that they used in their marketing that would create traps or obstacles that the Domino's pizza delivery people would have to overcome in order to get you your pizza on time. Which, if the Noid succeeded and your pizza were late, that means that it would be free. So, in my mind, the Noid is kind of an anti-hero, but whatever. Domino's had a slogan.
So avoid the Noid.
Look, it's a Noid. Avoid the Noid. He ruins pizzas.
By the way, the premise of the video game that I mentioned has nothing to do with preventing pizza delivery. The Noid does have pizza eating contests with the villains in the video game, but while that is weird in and of itself, it is not the topic of this video. So I, closer to present day, was reminiscing about this video game and the Noid. Whatever happened to the Noid, I wondered. So with these strange yet fond thoughts in the forefront of my mind, I embarked upon a Google journey that I thought would be a pleasant stroll down memory lane. I was wrong. Now, I do intend to speak about this as delicately as I can manage, but I do wish to forewarn you that the upcoming section of this video will include discussions of mental illness and may potentially be upsetting. Okay, so a man who was suffering from mental illness named Kenneth Lamar Noid was aware of the Domino's mascot. And since the two of them shared a name, he believed that the Noid was created specifically to mock him. He thought that Domino's had invented this mascot and the slogan as a way to tell people to stay away from him. So he saw the phrase avoid the Noid as meaning avoid Kenneth Lamar Noid. And eventually, he had enough. On January 30th, 1989, the 22-year-old Kenneth Lamar Noid went into a Domino's in Georgia and held 2 employees hostage at gunpoint for 5 hours. He did discharge his weapon during this time, firing it into the ceiling, and while the 2 employees were unharmed, I think that having this incident where the person actually fires their gun just adds an extra level of stress and tension to the people involved in the incident. During the crisis, Kenneth Lamar Noid told the employees to call the Domino's headquarters, demand $100,000, a plane to take him to Mexico, and a white limousine as his getaway car. He also told police that he would be willing to trade one of the hostages for a copy of a book called The Widow's Son. And when police got him the book, he went back on the deal and kept both of the hostages. In case you were curious, the book that he asked for is the second in a series called The Historical Illuminatus Chronicles. These books are a series of satirical, faux historical books about secret societies like the Masons or the Illuminati, amongst others, and presents itself like the book is telling you the real history behind the history that everyone is told. I looked for a quick summary of The Widow's Son, and this might be a totally unnecessary sub-bullet within the context of this video, but the book itself and the author just sound like absolutely insufferable. But if I had to guess, I would say the conspiracy angle nature of the story and Noid's interest in it does seem to be kind of connected. Bonus fact, the author of The Widow's Son also published a book in 1973 called The Sex Magicians. Back to the situation at hand. Noid eventually requested 2 pizzas and a salad, and while he was eating, the 2 employee hostages were able to escape unharmed, and Noid eventually turned himself in to police. Kenneth Lamar Noid pleaded insanity in court and was sent to a mental health facility. Sounds like the end of the story, right? Unfortunately, it's not. After 3 months, Kenneth was released from the facility and resumed living independently. And on February 23rd, 1995, Kenneth took his own life in his apartment. Domino's had actually continued to use the Noid mascot until 1991. If you'll remember, the hostage incident was in 1989. So they continued to use the Noid for 2 years. And many people assume that Domino's stopped using the Noid because of the hostage incident or because of Kenneth taking his own life. However, if you look at the dates, this obviously isn't the case. And on a podcast called The World, Ernie Parrish, the creative director behind the Noid, and Tim McIntyre, the vice president of communications at Domino's, explicitly said that the incidents with Kenneth Lamar Noid had nothing to do with the discontinuation of the Noid mascot. You can tell from the podcast that this is clearly a touchy subject for them, but not really in the way that you would expect. They come across as very tone-deaf and kind of insensitive. They acknowledge the role that their marketing played in Kenneth's death, but I'm surprised that they chose to continue using the character at all after 1989. And after Kenneth's death, I would be willing to give Domino's the benefit of the doubt, except that they did ultimately use the character again. several years later. The Noid made a brief appearance in a 2009 commercial, but in 2011, for the character's 25-year anniversary, Domino's released a Facebook game called The Noid's Super Pizza Shootout. Yikes. Like, yeah, this whole thing with Kenneth Lamar Noid is kind of a weird anecdote, but he was a real person who lost his struggle against mental illness, and he's not a public figure. He was an actual, just individual person and was brought into a public sphere because of this very unfortunate coincidental situation that caused things to escalate in a very unexpected way. And you can find articles about these incidents and about him all across the internet, and they vary in sensitivity level. Like, there was an article that went out through the Associated Press at the time of the 1989 hostage incident, and it has a headline that's kind of a joke, which just seems a little bit weird to me. Mental health awareness is not great in the United States. And if it's not great now in 2021, the world must have been a terribly unkind place in 1989. Like, I held off on making a YouTube video about this topic because the bizarre nature of the incident does kind of create an element of humor, and I didn't really want to be making light of an individual person's struggle with mental illness, as well as a traumatic event experienced by, like, minimum wage pizza store employees. Except that now, in the year of our Lord 2021, Domino's has released a brand new marketing campaign prominently featuring the return of the Noid.
Avoid the Noid when you get any 2 or more medium 2-topping Domino's pizzas.
And while Domino's is definitely not responsible for the mental well-being of individual citizens not in any way related to the company, I still think that the stance that they've taken on this issue is not great. And the cynical part of me, the part that's familiar with public relations and what I like to call the PETA strategy, kind of wonders if they brought back the Noid because they knew they would get a lot of news coverage about the Mascot and the Kenneth Lamar Noid incidents, in effect bringing them free advertising. Besides, does anyone love this mascot? Like, were people creating change.org petitions and just like really clamoring for the return of the Noid? I don't think he's a great mascot. He's kind of creepy. So I really think that Domino's should just take their own advice and avoid the Noid going forward. I thought about getting pizza and eating it during this video, but not from a Domino's, from one of like the many local pizza restaurants that are within like a 2-block radius. But then I just had a mental image of what that video would be like trying to talk about mental health while I'm just jamming like slices of pizza in my own face. Talk about tonal dissonance, but I still want pizza.